All right, we're live. Hey, everybody. It's 8:08. It's the day, for the famous drum machine to be celebrated. Uh Speaking of, we were talking right before we went live about bands where we didn't know that we knew all their songs. And the 808 drum machine is the same way. You may or may not know it, but you know it. So happy 808 Day, August 8th, 2024. This is Gimbalabs Live Spaces, Gimbalabs and friends. We get together on Thursdays to talk about what we're going to do next to align on plans. And we have been building some systems together. I'll pull up the Notion. After after a lot of months of this year starting on Miro, and we can always go back there. We're doing an experiment right now, starting from our list of projects. And they're organized as follows. We've got proposals, we've got stuff we're planning, we've got proposals that are going through the review and consent stage, more on that in just a moment. And then we've got stuff that's in progress. Now, ideally, everything here that's in progress ought to have an owner and some dates on it. We're not going to worry about the dates for now. We'll have a chance to revisit these. You can see, for example, that some of these have end dates that are in the past. So we'll want to take a look at that. And some of these, like Alex started or Hinson started, they're not here right now. But maybe one quick housekeeping thing we could do is just add owners to these. So I'm the one who's just been adding people with Notion accounts as needed and paying that bill. So not much to do there, and actually not even an end date, but we might even be able to close out this project soon enough. But for now, I'm handling that, so that's easy enough. And then would it be fair to say, Harsha, that you're the owner of the sustain and maintain proposal?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and you can drop me in there too. Me and
Yeah,
Harsha will work on that one. What do you think,
Cool.
Harsha?
yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Yep. And being the owner doesn't mean you're, cast adrift and you'll never get help from anybody who's not the owner. It's just a way of saying, hey, look, there's somebody running point on this that we can ask questions. How does that feel to everybody?
Yeah, to me, yeah, it feels so owner. Yeah, like that's on point that we can add that people can ask us questions. For me, it's sort of making a commitment to keep that at the top of frame. Like it's sort of, you know, when we make a commitment on a team, it's sort of like we use this term role a bit, but it's something that like I want when I think of Gimbal Labs, I want to think, especially in this 5 months of this proposal, I want to think about sustain and maintain. And that means it's sort of like the admin. If you look through the proposal, you'll see that it's like there's there's a little treasury for supporting this driver, of sustaining and maintaining Gimbal Labs, and has a lot to do with facilitation and with our PBLs. So it's a real general sort of project. And yeah, I think that what ownership in this sense is not necessarily source like that, but it means that I want to have a closer relationship to it. And when I think of Gimbal Labs, I want that to be like my touchstone, if that's cool.
That's really cool. And that's a good model. And you almost outlined a blog post there for like how we think about sharing work.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Um, we've established circles here at Gimbal Labs too, and you can see that almost all of these are assigned to a circle. Some of them are assigned to this admin circle right here, which isn't a formal circle that we defined early on. We came up with education. I guess that's what PBLs is, and we can maybe change these, but I'm not going to rush into that right now. Right? We've got sustainability, we've got builders and developers, community outreach, and there was a fifth one, education, community outreach,
Oh,
uh,
it's
technical.
it's right here. I got it coming up in
Yeah, I need
two
the mirror board.
seconds. Yeah, I'm in the mirror board. Outreach and advocacy, sustainability and funding.
Let's
build
update this right now. Yeah, let's.
builders contributing and doing, community onboarding, trust building, education, learning, and teaching.
Okay, so this is complete. It's just that the PBL is one. Maybe I can call this education instead. Something like that. Okay. Um, Now this admin one, let's keep it beyond the scope now to decide if this should be here, but just as a story, we've done similar work inside the Andamio organization of setting up circles for the scope of work. And some of them are very active and some of them kind of take a backseat depending on day-to-day priorities. We also have an admin circle, but the important thing we've named inside of that circle is that this is not like a admin meaning like at the top of some hierarchy. It really is a service circle, right? So we don't go and say, hey, everybody, here's what you're going to do, and you got to do it now. We say to other circles, oh, like, how can we support you? How can we help you make sure all boxes are checked and that kind of thing? And so maybe there's a little something like that happening here, right? I do this Notion Plus accounts because it doesn't take very long. And once people have an account, then now they can work better, right? And maybe there's something similar going on right here.
Yep, I feel that. Yeah.
And yeah,
And I think that's a
you brought
great,
up
I think
source.
that's a great sort of it's not the top of an or the admin circle is not the top of an or like kind of like a top of an org chart, but rather like almost sits aside. It's a service circle, and it touches on all of the other ones, meaning that if you in education need some admin work, because there's folks that are, like I don't mind. I love working in Notion. I love, taking things and putting things in boxes. It's just something that I find myself good at, and it doesn't irk me. And yeah, so I like that idea of like it's a is providing a service. And in the S3 delegator, delegatee roles and responsibilities, I think it fits in with that. And as we work more with it, I figure we'll get more lived experience and sort of an understanding of it. But I think you just in that, just that it's not the top of a pyramid or org chart, like the admin is telling you kind of whatever terminology that is, but it is a service. It's like you can ask the admin circle to do stuff, and they touch on all the other circles, providing administrative. Nori uses the term "wash the dishes." It's like wash the dishes service. It's just like, yeah, you do stuff and you make dirty dishes, and it's important for someone to clean those dishes and put them back to where they belong, so you can use them again.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And it feels good once the dishes are done.
I love having clean
Everybody can be a
dishes.
little bit more creative.
When you go into cook and all that, you're like, oh, man, I'm gonna have to spend all my energy, all my creative juice is gonna go into like washing these freaking dishes. And uh,
Yeah, yeah, it applies. And you mentioned source as well. Source is interesting with regard to hierarchy because
right.
in some of these cases, maybe the owner and the source is the same, right? Other times, maybe not. And we're still in the early stages of applying that concept. But the idea behind it is that with the source, you could call it hierarchy or not, but the source is responsible for sensing what's in bounds in a given project or circle.
Yep.
And you might look to somebody in the source rule to say, hey, does this fit what we're doing? And they would say, yeah, and here's why, or not quite, and here's why.
So who would be source? Yeah, we can yeah. So it would be kind of interesting maybe have an owner and a source, or an administrator and a source, because I feel like, and we did this a little bit with some of the work in other communities where there is like how did it's like the Greeks used to fight. They would have like a fighter. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 300, but they would have like a fighter, and he was generally like a lord or a gentry, like a prince or something. But then they had these little slaves, or I think maybe called helots, but they were like little servants. Or not a minion, but just like helpers. They would do things. They would keep the weapons sharp. They would wash the dishes. They'd make sure that the food was there. They were, combat service support. And that always
Right.
appealed to me, that these guys, and they would say they fought in a dyad. And a lot of times, the heroes, because like for instance, in that famous 300, the helots said, we'll stay and fight and die here with our dudes. So.
Mm.
And
Right.
I've gotten dark. I mean, it's like, this is not warfare we're talking about here, but it is like, it's like facing a challenge with a buddy. It's the buddy system, it's a buddy system. And so there is this idea of like the source, like, hey, I've got the vision, and I set priorities, and I say what's in and out, and there's like I'm the decider. And and then there's people that like, oh, we do the work, kind of like in the army, the enlisted folks would say, if you call an enlisted person a sir, which connotates an officer, they say, sir, no, I work for a living. And then, it's like, oh, right, you do the work.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, I
There
feel the
are
coffee
there
going.
are there are endless analogies, to war, to what we do right now, right? Like the like the corporate world, they wear business suits, and business suits have direct lineage back to suits of armor,
Mhm.
right? And so, like what you're talking about with the Greeks, like that was the squires in the medieval
Yeah,
ages,
there you go.
the helpers, right?
Knights and squires.
And
Yeah.
so, like I feel like what we are is what the Patriot, the film The Patriot, illustrated, was the fact that a lot of the Revolutionary War success came from, or at least according to the movie, came from early guerrilla fighters, right? They were guys of the land, and they just rambled around and they did what they did. Which that's what the movie Platoon was about. About the Vietnam War. It was about guys that just went out in the jungle and just went after the enemy. And I feel like in blockchain, that's kind of what Cardano is. Cardano is the guerrillas with
Yeah,
formal
decent.
methods.
Yeah, sort of decentralized, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That is strength. Cool. So keep all these ideas in mind. Decisions about any of this stuff would come from proposals. So where do proposals come from? Well, that's the top of the pipeline that ends down here. Here's the stuff we're actually doing. And what we do is we take ideas through a process from somebody taking the initiative to put some initial thoughts in writing, moving on, and I'm not sure if these are in the right order. Let me pause on planning for just a second, but we move from the proposal stage to the part where we are actually reviewing and consenting to things we'll do together. And what I wondered last week is if one standing agenda item could be that every week at this meeting, we get to hear. It would be wrong to say start because we're 30 minutes into this meeting already, but we had our check-in round and some high-level conversation. But what do you say? This is the place that we try to get to first on this board. Does that feel okay to everybody?
Yeah.
And there may be no updates. So right here, I see two projects that are in the community review and consent stage. One from Harsha that he already said during check-in he'd like to review today. And another from Newman that you have the option of we can jump into it and take a look again. Or you could say, oh, no updates this week, and you could give us a quick status update.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Can we start with Harsha because he brought that up already?
Yeah, let me quickly share the proposal because I wrote it in Google Doc. One second.
Awesome.
Hey, Adrian. Hey, Nelson.
Hey everyone.
Hey, Nelson.
I just shared the link in
Oh,
the
nice.
chat.
Do you want to share screen or do you want me to pull it up?
Yes, I'll share the screen as well. So the basic idea behind this proposal is to consent on the spaces that Gimbalabs will be hosting, and any additional spaces that we want to host, individuals can propose or groups can propose, and then we'll go from there. So currently, the idea behind the proposal is to host these spaces, which are the existing spaces, which is Plutus PBL, Gimbalabs Playground, Mesh, Cardano Go, and Gimbalabs Open Space. The additional spaces, the same thing. There are some really good spaces were mentioned during the workshop. And anyone interested in those spaces can put forward a proposal to host those spaces. And the idea behind this is that at least for the PPBL courses, the spaces have content for them and there's a structure to these spaces. So it's just the spaces are, we know how to host those spaces specifically. Same with Gimbalabs Playground and the open spaces, which is this space as well. And the compensation for these spaces, for the space hosts, still needs to be decided. And any new spaces that would be hosted would get the same compensation unless specifically mentioned in that proposal for now. And the intended outcome is to make sure that these spaces are hosted weekly or whichever frequency that is agreed upon for these specific spaces. And all the key details are kind of in this Miro link right here. I'm just going through the proposal like really fast. If you want me to slow down, I can do that as well. Like, what do you guys think?
Can we just
I would
interrupt you anytime?
Yeah, of course.
I would suggest, I mean, you know, I would like you just to get the big overview, and then as we're going through it, like for instance, I thought of something around like the driver or something, other things. But we can just make a mental note or even put a comment or just write down a note, and then at the end we sort of go that. Otherwise, I fear the pitfall here was that we don't get to see the whole proposal. Because maybe you address something that I'm interested in later on in the proposal, etc. So if we could, I'd love it. Like just real quick overview, reading of it, and then we can go into it. That's my
and we
idea.
can go section by section. So the key for this section is to consent on these spaces. Plutus PBL, Gimbalabs Playground, Mesh Live Coding, Cardano Go Live Coding, and Gimbalabs Open Spaces.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Like with the Go live coding, is there an endpoint with that? Is the endpoint with Cardano Go live coding a Cardano or an Andamio Go PBL? Is that the goal?
Good question.
I mean, because once the Go node's built, then what else is there to do with the Go live coding?
Right. That one is a little bit of a complicated case because there was a Catalyst proposal for it as well. That was mostly for Andamio development. And it may or may not belong on the Gimbalabs calendar. But since it is one of these live coding spaces, we decided to put it there. The end of that is at minimum, we want to finish delivering the Catalyst proposal. But we are also interested in building a Cardano Go PBL course to go alongside the other ones that we're building.
Yeah, and Steve, that's a great, and it's one of those sociocracy things about the time frame, and there is a timeline section in the proposal, the document. But if you think of each one of these spaces as a project, and we've talked about like the seasonality of things around here, I think it would be really good and make me feel comfortable to like, when do we review and when can we sunset? Not to say there's not a new sunrise, to follow the analogy, but I like the idea of like, oh yeah, this is a set beginning and start time. and then it can kind of start thinking like a project, and then it's easy to make a commitment. It's like, oh yeah, Blues PBL is, it's sort of started now on a soft launch, and we know that it's going to peak around, September, October, and October, November, December is going to be like the full meat of it, and then in December it's gonna tail off. Is that what you kind of mean by like this the time stuff?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I'm not concerned about time. I mean, like what's time to a pig? I'm more, like it's about goals,
Oh, so like when does it finish? Like when does it achieve its when does it
Yeah.
satisfy its okay. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's also in there too. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so these are the current spaces. And for additional spaces, I was thinking individuals who are interested in the space or someone that suggested the space can put forward proposals. Um, how are you guys feeling about this? Or do you think from the additional spaces, are you able to see the Miro board?
The link, I don't know if the link got me to exactly that spot because I remember it.
Uh, let
Let's
me
try
do
it
one
one more
thing.
time.
Let me stop sharing and reshare again. Oh,
Oh,
I
I've got it
can't.
now. I've got it
Oh,
now.
you got it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
1 second. Let me share the whole screen. Mm. So there are like a bunch of additional spaces. Some of them I think I mean, a lot of them are really good, really exciting. But I'm just worried that we decide on a space and then there is no one to host it. Uh, so that is why I prefer someone to take the responsibility for that space. Um, Yeah, what are you guys thinking in terms of the additional spaces that have been proposed?
There are some cool ones, yeah.
I think that's exactly the approach that we should take, right? There's a lot of good ideas here, and spaces are one category of good ideas, right? But here's one category of great ideas. The ones that actually happen depend on people to make sure they happen. That's a productive philosophy in my book.
So,
I, I remember just to
mhm.
tell I remember the hackathon, and I really love for instance, back in Little Fish days, and they had sort of like an all hands on deck, and it's like, hey, it's like for this week we're gonna try to develop this thing. I think it was like a survey to go to the Cardano summit. So there was this great sort of ticking time, kind of, driver. It's just like we want to do something for the summit, and so it has very clear, and we all really worked diligently, with a focus for like 4 or 5 days, and it I like the idea of a hackathon. So in the future, yeah, like it would be cool, and to the idea of like that we can create new spaces, but I don't know if it's in this framework of the sustain and maintain proposal and treasury, for like, because that's the resource that could maybe like spur the initiative. um but that could be like another proposal on that 30,000 ADA that's in there, and to say, hey, I want to take 5,000 ADA and make a hackathon, and the hackathon will go on in October or something. Um,
Nice.
is is that sort of in this? Is that the spirit of these like new, like new spaces?
100%. I think that that's the idea, but
Okay.
someone has to take the responsibility. One individual or more can come forward and say, "Hey, we are putting a proposal for the hackathon. This is the timeline, and this is the amount of time we'll be spending on it." And the moment you make the proposal and it passes, that means it's part of the proposal.
So yeah, we could say that. Yeah, and I see what you've written here. Expectation is anyone interested in hosting a new space will put forward proposals, or new spaces can be created with the proposal process. Basically,
Yes.
new spaces can be created. Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah,
And
coming.
meaning, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, just saying that these are the ones that we're consenting to now because we've gone through, and they'll be there. And if you look at the sustained and maintained proposal, these are the ones that are specifically mentioned in the proposal. Yeah. Am I getting that? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
So we haven't put any in and we haven't put any out, and we're just saying, hey, if we want new ones, we can make proposals. That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and these spaces, the idea behind the proposal is to consent on these spaces. We can still say, hey, these spaces are not useful. We need completely different spaces and completely different hosts. That's also fine. But this is just an initial proposal to start things off in the consent process for the spaces.
Yeah, I like it.
So the rationale behind these specific spaces is that, at least for the live coding spaces, is that the content is already there and the structure is already there because they have been hosted before, or they are continuously being hosted at this point in time. For the playground, I think it's one of our flagship spaces, and it does, in a lot of cases, become like the entry point for the wider Cardano community to know about Gimbalabs and then join into other spaces and open spaces and stuff like that. And the open spaces, I feel, is a mandatory space just because we have to have a space to make these decisions on the treasury and the direction of Gimbalabs in general. Yeah,
And
so
Playground
that's my
is in the
rationale.
list. Playground is in the list above.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, good. Actually, thinking about this more, thinking about the Go question, what if we take the first, third, and fourth bullet points and we just say live coding? And we just assume that live coding will be maintained, but we don't commit to a specific kind.
Huh. Yeah, it's kind of like factoring out live coding and just say we have a live coding space and a live coding
We're gonna
team.
keep doing live coding. How would that feel to everybody?
Yeah.
That's
And it goes
good,
along
yeah.
with, it goes along with what Steve was saying about, like, okay, the goal, so like the goals can shift.
So my concern is when we say live coding, the focus is kind of gone because people that do Cardano Go live coding are not necessarily the starters that do Plutus live coding, and similar with Mesh. So segregating these groups might help in focusing and helping those specific groups, but that's just an idea.
Right. Well, and the reason I bring this up is because of a concern that first, like Cardano Go live coding is separate from the scope, I think, of this proposal. I don't think that those sessions should be funded by this proposal, even as they're going to continue for at least another month or two. And then after that, if it's an essential part of what we're doing at Gimbalabs, then there can be a focused proposal for that. Similarly, Mesh live coding is at this moment not running. And we're excited in partnership with the Mesh team to really show off a lot of what they've built. But the simple fact is we don't have a dedicated session for that on the upcoming calendar, even though we likely will soon. And then Plutus PBL is great. And what we've done the last couple Tuesdays and Wednesdays has more or less been Plutus PBL, but it's also been kind of an open door workshop where we are thinking about course development together. And so all of those, we are going to keep having those sessions. It feels really good. Aiken PBL sessions are on the horizon because there's another proposal for that. Same with Marlowe PBL. So it might be best just to assume that we have a certain amount of live coding space, but we're not holding ourselves accountable to some future unknowns about precisely how we will delegate our time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, then yeah.
We could say weekly live coding sessions. I guess these are all potentially weekly. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, I think it's fine. We could do a round.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can do a round if or anyone with any concerns or clarifying questions can raise their hand. We'll give it like 30 seconds to see if anyone has anything.
Okay.
So,
Mhm.
I have this thought, like there's what we want to represent publicly, and then there's how we want to think conceptually as a team, right? And I think that kind of drives this idea of like listing each individual coding session. We're just saying live coding, right? And that's kind of, like that's what's held me back from writing a proposal about Playground. I don't really want to change anything publicly about Playground. I want it to look as if it's open to anybody and everybody. What I want to do is I want to talk to you all. I want to hear from Ken and Adrian and Nelson and Mix and Harsha. I want to hear from everybody about like, who would you like to have a conversation with? And then let's go get them. And that's kind of what I'm offering as, besides just sitting there and hosting and being a nice guy to whoever shows up at Playground. I want to like, there's people I want to talk to, right? There are projects out there that are, they don't get a lot of notice on the Twitterati, right? Like I recently, because I've been able to invest, diversify and invest in the Cardano community. Like there's groups like Yam4, which is like long years and years and years ago. Well, they're starting to make noise again, and like they're doing they're doing collateralized lending with no term, with no ongoing interest payments. You pay a flat fee interest, and then they've got a tokenomics thing around that. And I want to grill them.
It's definitely possible to write a proposal for this. Let's get through this document and then
Okay.
reserve time to talk about Playground.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this wouldn't, but is something that's suggested now going to change Playground? It doesn't seem like we're going to change the idea of the Playground, but as far as like making it specific.
I want to change it for us. I want to change it for us.
Right.
Like I want to know, who would Adrian like to have a conversation with in the coding community.
That feels like we can do that. I feel very confident, and thank you for sharing that. We can definitely come back to that. I'm also interested in that. Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah, so in this proposal, we just consent that these spaces exist. And then on top of that, any changes I think you can make. So the intended outcome is that we consent to these spaces and they are hosted as per schedule. Do you think anything else need to be added to the intended outcome?
Yeah. Well, we may get to it in impacts and benefits, because and actually in our proposal template, like intended outcome versus impact and benefits, like where do we put like those like evaluation criteria? And I'm thinking of like, well, there is one for evaluation criteria, but I'm thinking about the reporting and the milestones for sustain and maintain Gimbalabs. The
Intended
and I think
outcomes. Let me go to that section. Wait.
Yeah. But it's kind of funny because I do have one little note, and I don't know if it helps about the background and rationale. Like I would love to have And we could just, because of our new structure, because it's just playground, open spaces, and live coding, which actually now I'm really loving because seems like it's clearer. But we've got kind of a rationale, and it really is a driver for playground. And I think what Steve just mentioned was like really getting at that, like, hey, why do we do playground? And open spaces, it's like, hey, why do we do playground? And why do we do open spaces? And it's for these going over, like, receiving and talking about proposals, just like what we're doing right now. So I think that's great, but I would love to have one little sentence paragraph about live coding, like what the rationale for live coding is, and then really it's what the driver or the why do we do live coding. So I'd love to add a sentence there about that, and that would, for whatever reason, it would, finish out a column.
What sentence would you suggest we
Like
add
just
for the rationale?
yeah, just under that Gimbalabs Open Spaces paragraph and above the note paragraph, just say Gimbalabs live coding is a support space for students in the PBLs.
You see how in Harsha, you see the next two paragraphs, you say the Gimbalabs playground, and then you say Gimbalabs open spaces. Newman's saying just write a similar sentence for live coding.
Yeah.
But the first one is
Oh, that's already there. Okay. So yeah, maybe Newman, do we have to just update the first sentence?
Oh, maybe. Oh, all current live coding spaces go in hand in the Well, yeah, I guess that is. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. Okay, I got you. I thought that was sort of not just the live coding spaces, but all of the spaces. And then there was like a specific thing because all of these spaces go with the primary driver, and they have structured they have a structure and a content. But then the I don't know. It seems like it should just say current spaces. This is how I would edit it. I would say the rationale behind running all current spaces, because that's how I refer to like all of these, the live coding spaces, the playground, and the open space. You see what I mean? Like,
So
Right. So you're saying give an intro paragraph that says this is why we do any spaces at all. And then
yeah,
here's three
there's
topic
types.
paragraphs.
Yeah, here are three
One
types
for
of spaces.
each.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
um,
So all the the rationale behind
All the
running
current spaces. Yeah.
and take out live coding, because then that confuses the.
so uh, so with the live coding spaces, since we go off of PBLs, I said
Yeah.
they have structure and content. But
Well,
structure and content is so what should I introduce for all spaces? Like how
yeah. Sorry to honestly, all it would need is just you could put in a paragraph below like this one, and I don't have edit access because I could
let
just type
me
her in. Yeah, open her up. I can let me see.
uh,
I'll give you it's easier enough just to type in what
I'll
I'm
just
thinking. See what you think.
give everyone edit access. Yeah, everyone can edit or
Sweet.
put comments or whatever.
See what we got. Yeah, so what I would do is I just put Gimbalabs. Oh boy, come on, fingers. Live coding. Go, and support PBLs. And then the rational behind current spaces. So we just take out spaces. Gimbalabs driver. Yeah, see, so this first paragraph is a general, this first paragraph is a general statement. And then these, honestly, these could be like bulleted, right? Because they match with this. I'm just thinking this as a reviewer, as somebody that, so here's live coding, see how this matches with this. And then the playground matches with this, and then the open spaces. For whatever reason, I may be a freak, but it's just, we've got some
And then
spectrum
this
disorder.
piece, right? This last piece of this sentence, Harsha was saying, really applies to the PBLs itself, right? But we
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
that sentence.
Well, there's something, I do like the idea that that all of these spaces, live coding, playground, open, have a content and a structure that is universal. And maybe it's just that there's a check-in and a check-out, or with something, because that helps. I mean, I think ultimately that will help with the facilitation, because we'll have I think that we'll end up having like an admin person that starts the Zoom, has the capability to start the Zoom, does the gets the recording, make sure that people have the right permissions, et cetera, et cetera. Possibly even doing the checklist for the proposal stuff, like the payments, making sure it's documented. These are admin things that we don't want to overwhelm. For instance, the live coding is going to need somebody like Mix or James, or somebody with that technical expertise to like answer the more educational questions, for instance, in the live coding PBL, to like support the students. That an admin, we're kind of overloading, and because they certainly could do the admin, but you see where they kind of have two different skill sets that we can kind of break apart. But that may get down to a different part of the proposal.
So, how are we feeling about this section? Do you think anything else needs to change? And by the way, so this is for us. Like, I can promise you that the milestone reviewers are not going to dig deep into any of these things. They'll just, because I do the same thing. 99% of everyone that I know does the same thing. So this is for us.
Yeah, definitely.
It also makes it really easy to submit milestone reports, right? Like this. If we hold ourselves to a higher standard, it's a good precedent.
Yeah, I feel like, I sort of begin with the end in mind. It's like, okay, make it easy on ourselves. Yeah, although it may feel like it's a little difficult. And let's see, spaces that support PBLs and already have structure and content in place for mesh, go and Ludus. Does that sound right?
I thought we were not mentioning Go.
Well,
I think I think it's well, right. We're not committing to any particular spaces, but if you want to say that, for example, we are currently working on content for these things, perhaps that could fit, right? That's background, but maybe not a commitment.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we can state it in a way that it's not like, hey, we're doing these, but we're just saying Mesh, Go, and Plutus already have structure and content in place. I feel good about that. Yeah.
And how are you feeling about this note? The compensation will be decided after we agree on the spaces.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds good.
Well, and we made it down to part 3 a little while ago. And if we're there again now, I do think that the compensation is part of this proposal.
Mhm.
I'd like to call this proposal done and consented to. We need to know what our expectations for meeting frequency, who's responsible for making sure that the meetings happen, and what's the compensation for participating in that work. To me, that's a really critical part of the proposal. So I would say, yeah, like let's figure it out.
So would you say we decide on compensation and then get back to this proposal? Or
It goes on this doc.
correct,
Compensation is one of the resources required further down in this document.
Yeah.
And this
makes sense.
document's not done without that.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Go ahead, Nelson.
Yeah, I think it doesn't make sense for like deciding on the space first and then talking about compensation later on.
Mhm.
If someone's volunteering to open up a space for free, then like what's stopping that? And I mean, yeah, if we're deciding that we are going to do a space, then uh, for yeah, my first thought is like if we're going to continue on the spaces we already have, like shouldn't we be compensating the work that's already going on, like instead of trying to
I,
bring
I
new.
I actually agree. So my concern with all of this is that we have one open space, multiple proposals. We usually go through either half a proposal or if we are lucky, we get through one proposal. The idea was to figure out compensation during the workshop itself, but we couldn't get through it.
Mhm.
And by the end of this month, we are supposed to submit the first milestone. So that is one of my concerns. How do we manage time? So does anyone have ideas? What do you suggest?
Yeah, I want to come through very loud and clear that we are doing it exactly right now. The reward for moving as inefficiently as we feel like we might be moving right now is we get better at this process and we get through more proposals at an open space session. That's actually a really exciting success metric and something we should probably graph over time. Hey, remember back in July and August 2024 when we could barely get through a half of a proposal in an open space session? Look how far we've come. Now it's December. We just got through 3 proposals today, right? We are doing the work in this moment of getting to the better future state, right? And we do have to be more efficient, and we do have a deadline of a catalyst milestone coming. But without this, the way to very quickly get those milestones done is to revert to a hierarchy where somebody says, oh, I'm going to make decisions about this and I'm going to report those to Catalyst, and everybody else has to now live with those decisions. I would rather be a month late with our first milestone report than rush the process that we are engaged in right now.
Got it.
I got it. Yeah.
So here a critical question, since we have to put compensation. Do you just want to go through the compensation part of the workshop now, since I don't know if Newman also has to present. So uh, whatever you guys decide.
Yeah. This
Um,
proposal feels urgent and timely to me, so I think if we use an entire hour on it today, that feels acceptable. Would there be any objections to staying on this until it's done?
No objection from me.
all right. So we can quickly jump into this section of the workshop. So in this section, just take a couple of minutes and put in numbers that would motivate you to host a space. Don't worry about, even if it's really high, don't worry about it. Be truthful to yourself and put any number. You can take a couple of minutes and just put this. What per hour compensation would motivate you to facilitate a space? And this is on the Miro board. Let me share the Miro link. Oh, I can't find oh, there it is.
And I wonder, it could, yeah, the hourly rate is, I just have a concern about that hour.
What's your concern, Newman?
Well, I would, and I've always sort of thought about it as compensating per space, but I guess a space
So, but what
is,
if a space is like 2 hours long? One space is 2 hours long, and another space is an hour long, and other space is 30 minutes. I mean, I'm not saying
yeah,
that it is like that, but
yeah, and I guess it just, I'm like, okay, I think let's just say 100 ADA for an hour space, and it's just okay, there's an hour, and then if it's shorter, then it's 50 ADA, and if it's 2 hours, then it's 200 ADA. Yeah, just 100 ADA an hour. That's my thought.
go ahead, Sebastian.
Yeah, I think facilitating a space also involves other tasks. For example, you produce the material, but you have to do some other activities. For example, you must to timestamp the video, for example.
Yeah.
You must to promote your space. You must to do something other other activities that and that are supporting activities to your role as facilitator. So
Correct.
you must be in. You should have in mind those other, or maybe that role of stamping and all these tasks that are mechanical are not so inspired. So inspiring sometimes. Maybe you should. I don't know if that must be delegated to other person, but it's important to have in mind that kind of a structure. Thanks.
I completely agree. That's why we have this marketing Gimbalabs group that is responsible for promotion, because if the same person, I mean, this is just my opinion, if the same person has to host and promote and edit video, it'll just be like a little much.
Yeah, it's too much.
But for the other side, when people must to do some other things, that injects an extra commitment, an extra dose of commitment in the people. Okay, I have not only to facilitate the if I have to do something else to give the show, I start to give to grab some other commitments. Okay, I'm investing too much effort in this to let it alone and not to end to not commit, no deliver on my commitments. So we have those two faces of the coin.
I agree. Yeah. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, this proposal process is powerful because it helps us notice things like that. And so, what do people think? I agree with Sebastian that when we do live sessions, there's other things that end up being necessary. On the other hand, the proposal, as Harsha has written it, is about keeping spaces going. And is it in the scope of this proposal to say that we must also, in addition to keeping these spaces going, we must promote them, we must record them, we must timestamp those recordings, right? Maybe, maybe not, but that's something everybody should think about for a second. My opinion is that promotion and sharing and post-processing of video, those would be separate projects. I think what we're talking about right now is keeping these sessions going, right? We can keep doing the sessions just like this with these 8 people showing up, without 9 people showing up, without promotion, right? And then when we decide it's time to promote, we could also have a separate budget for that. And when we break these things down, it gets easier to talk about priorities, right? What does everybody else think? Should a expectation of precisely how these spaces will be promoted and how recordings will be shared, is that in the scope of this proposal?
Do you want to do rounds for this, or does anyone want to raise their hand for concerns or clarifying questions? Please feel free. Go ahead, Steve.
I think, all of the other things that go along, right? Just this list of things that James just said. There's a difference between somebody doing it as, as an ancillary task and somebody who does it well. And when I mean well, I mean not just doing it professionally and smart timestamps and well marketed and the diverse array of social media, but also in the sense of the amount of time it takes a person to do that. Somebody who knows all that shit can do it really quick. If I start doing that shit, it's going to look like I'm a turtle, So it's got a skill level attached to all of those things.
Yep, I agree.
And okay, so here I'll keep the round going, and looking forward to hearing from others. I think that skill is possibly so like what is unskilled? For instance, facilitating a discussion, it's a very skilled task. I think one of the reasons why Gimbalabs is so important to me is that James is a very seasoned facilitator. He's been in front of the classroom quite a bit, et cetera, et cetera. And like if I did it and I've been trying to do it, then it would be one thing. And, but then there are also what are the unskilled tasks, and can we build tasks that they can be collaborated. But then I also think, just the other hand, because I'm a Gemini, the other hand of what Pavan is saying about, like, if we create like a services and we break apart the role or the responsibility for promotion, responsibility for facilitation, responsibilities for documentation, et cetera, that it does add a layer of overhead. Personally, I think that the overhead can be overcome with good sort of project management and good habits. Yeah, so that's my round check.
Sebastian, you had your hand up. Did you still have something?
Sure, I'm agree. I'm agree in if we put these responsibilities as Steve says, this is in a different area. Maybe if we put aside of this task in hands of other people, different facilitators can work. But in my opinion, this must be under the umbrella of sustained spaces. Thanks. So when we are, it's necessary to put this in. It's key to in my opinion, in the practical sense, to keep alive and space is key to develop this kind of tasks.
So Sebastian, I have a small clarifying question. would you put all of this in one proposal, or would you prefer to separate these proposals, the overhead work and just the host and space consent?
The same. I think the same. We can put that in the same proposal, but maybe putting in charge different person. We could describe this as a role to the role to the spaces.
Got it. So each
Because
space would have someone responsible for hosting, and recording is just pressing a button, or is there more to it, right?
No, yes, it should be we have a lower budget, so we need a single person doing those stuff for all the spaces, I would think.
Okay. So the overhead would specifically be promotion and adding timestamps to the videos, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm.
Oh, yeah.
Does anyone have concerns or clarifying questions about that? Like, the current opinion is that we put all of this in one proposal, including the overhead work. Doesn't anyone have any concerns with that?
Now,
And is promotion part of the overhead, for example?
Yeah.
I think we can clarify more with like what the promotion overhead actually is. Like it's an announcement in Discord, it's an announcement in Twitter, and is that it? Or like what are the expectations in marketing? Like or like is there a minimum to it?
and and thanks for that. Following that also, is it different for each space? So promotion for the live coding, for the PBLs versus the playground versus the open space.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's because of those two questions that I object to promotion of these spaces being part of this proposal. I do not object to how important it is to promote our spaces. I think it's absolutely important. And because I think it's so important, I don't think it should be snuck in as a detail of a proposal about which spaces we're going to run. By focusing this proposal, by doing less in any given proposal, we actually increase the likelihood that things will get done because we have clarity about what the proposal is. And so if we start to write a proposal, hey, which spaces should we run at Gimbalabs? But we end up trying to decide in there, how should we promote the spaces that we're running? That's called distraction. That's a lack of focus that by splitting it up, make sure that we get to clarity sooner and completion as well.
Personally, I am agreeing with James on that. But Sebastian, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, more than the importance or non-importance of the promoting the spaces. What the main question I have to this proposal is why to do this set of proposals. That why it's what is because why to do this? Why to do this? What is the sense in the document I'm writing? We are doing this for just deliver on the proposal or the catalyst proposal, or we are delivering for build a kind of public service to the Cardano ecosystem. That's my concern in reality. What is the why? because before the last years, or James mainly, have done these spaces without budget. Why is different today? That's motivation. Once
What?
we have
No.
if we have the correct why, besides of delivering of the catalyst proposal, all the pieces fall in place.
You're
Correct.
saying,
No, yeah, go ahead, Jim.
wait, you're saying why are we writing why Harsha's proposal?
Why we are discussing? No. Why you are discussing this? We are deciding what spaces we want to keep alive or reinject a new life or something like that. Okay, that's the why. And in my curiosity, because it's not a concern, just a curiosity. Why are doing this? Because it's just for delivering on the catalyst proposal. Okay, I understand it. But my concern in that is, okay, before and after the proposal, what are we? What we can do? Okay, that's but in general terms, I agree. I agree with the okay. We can keep this proposal simple and with just the essentials. I agree. Thanks.
To be fair, this is again my opinion. I think most of us at least agree that promoting and actually helping people out with these spaces is extremely important. But the only question is separate proposals or one proposal.
And this is part of growing into this process together. We're early in the process of using proposals like this. And a relatively small number of people have brought proposals forward and helped to refine them. And when we're in these early days, it's a common tendency to feel like whenever we talk about one proposal, we must talk about everything. But we have to break that cycle. We're talking about a specific proposal right now. And if we get good at this process, then we'll have time to talk about another proposal that'll be linked to this one. They'll be mutually reinforcing, right? But we have to do the first thing. And that, Sebastian, that's my big why compared to 2 years ago, right? Yes, I kept a few things going for a couple years. I burnt myself out and went broke along the way. Like, let's be honest, right? I would like to move beyond that stage of my participation in this ecosystem, right? And so we're going through this process right now to answer your question. Why? Because we're leveling up how we collaborate and who's able to take some ownership of what we're doing here. And the catalyst funds are fuel to make that change. And we're going to report back to Catalyst, but hopefully that's not why we're doing this, right? If the only reason why we're talking about this proposal right here is to deliver for Catalyst, of course, we still have some growing to do in that direction. But I believe that this Catalyst funding can help us move to a new state of Gimbalabs, one that might be a lot of different things for a lot of people, but speaking for myself, I need it to be one that doesn't burn me out and make me spend all my money. Like I did that already. It's not sustainable.
Go ahead, Steve.
And I think the reason that the funding was approved is because that desire in the community for Gimbalabs to be a well-rounded and professional organization is acknowledged to require funding, right? And to meet that definition, we need somebody that professionally deals with the content that we produce, right? And they need to be paid. And the people who drive these spaces, they need to be paid. And the community supports that. And so I think this proposal is an idea proposal. I don't think that it's necessarily an execution proposal in that sense, in that administrative sense. This is a conceptual proposal, so yeah, that's why I'm agreeing.
Okay. And this proposal needs to be grounded. This proposal needs a name of a facilitator for open spaces, a name or a list of names of facilitators for live coding and for playground, and it needs specific funding. This can't stay an abstract and conceptual proposal, otherwise it's not done. And so our next step with this proposal is to say, how exactly are we going to make sure that open spaces keeps happening? Who's going to do it? How much are they going to get paid? What are the responsibilities? And what's the review date, right? And how will we know that it was successful? We must get to that stage. Otherwise, we haven't upgraded yet, right? And so again, those questions are why I think we should have other proposals around how we share the results of these sessions and how we promote attendance to these sessions, all of it, so important. But if we don't know who's facilitating each session, there's nothing to promote. And that's what we have to figure out with this proposal.
But because I think but we're first. I mean, I really see that pitfall of you button hook me, James. You button hook me. Because I really see the need for, and I also see the time. I can hear the bells ringing. This was fantastic. I think we really got into it because we got down to the concrete. And yeah, so that is that's my thought. I'm feeling really good about this.
This is progress. I know this might not feel like progress by every metric to everybody. And I promise that it is. We do this now because we're going to get better at this proposal process. We're going to get better at writing proposals. And we're doing it. You can feel it happening. We are at time. Let's do a very, very quick checkout round. Mix, how you checking out today? We'll skip to Nelson. Nelson, how about you? Oh, there's Mix.
Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
We can.
Yeah, it was great. I don't know if this is the first proposal. The community is I'm working on it, and we have the opinion around it. But I see a lot of progress. I'm glad that I'm witnessing this. And sure, a lot of things need to be done, definitely. But great work, and thank you, Harsha, for starting this. But I know a lot of talks has to happen before action, but I bet, and I want to make you guys sure that the next proposal we will have less talks and we will have more action because we're just learn, But kudos and good luck.
To Nelson.
Yeah, Harsha, big thanks for bringing in this proposal. I think it's really well needed. And I'm open to conversations, and maybe I'll reach out to you and we can, I don't know, if you need
Yeah,
more,
absolutely.
we can do that. This is really exciting, and I think it's time. And thanks everyone for all this.
Adrian.
I'm checking out good. I think there were a lot of good discussions. Let's see where they will take us.
And Ken.
Yeah, it was a good discussion. I was sort of fighting with Nick's trying to get to do some stuff while I was listening to what everyone was saying. So yeah, good.
And Harsha.
I felt pretty good about it, but I was surprised that Newman is the only one who has opinions on how much to be paid.
Oh
But
man.
yeah, I think this is progress.
You
Yeah.
try to ask a simple question, Harsha, you know. And Sebastian.
Good conversation. Very good. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day.
Thanks, partner. Newman.
I'm really happy that we were able to drill down and that we found a pitfall of losing focus, which is like just like the number one thing for me and just like my makeup. I was really stoked to hear like good conversation, especially the stuff from Steve and Harsha for really facilitating and doing a great job of standing up for this. And by way of this next proposal about is like, what should Harsha be? How should Harsha be compensated other than our goodwill? Yeah.
And we have a proposal for that, don't we?
That's right. That's this next proposal that,
Love that.
so that's how I snuck in a little bit of, like, I talked a little bit about this next one that's also in the consent and community review. And you can look at it on the Notion page and ask me about it if you want. I will be working on it in the next week. I do have a deadline for the end of August for this. So.
And Steve.
Good. Appreciate the conversation. I appreciate Harsha's work on this proposal and thought. And I could tell he's really been thinking about it. And you know, as far as money, I want 1 million Lovelaces.
I see what you did.
You might even get 1 billion. I don't know.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, here. Thank you, Harsha, for getting this going. Another really cool thing that happens with proposals is the stuff that doesn't get into the final document serves as fertilizer for the next proposals. We already see that happening. And so you heard me trying to protect some focus for this one, but also we should note, right, these other things we've talked about. And like Newman just pointed out, right, getting clarity about other proposals. We have material for that. That's really exciting. So we'll end the live stream. Adrian, Nelson, Mix, and anybody else who's interested, would you be willing to stay on for 15 minutes? Because I want to run an idea by you.
Sure. No problem.
And yeah, so we'll stop the live stream. Anybody watching this, we meet on Thursdays for Open Spaces. You saw us talking about how we're going to keep doing so. You can get up to date at gimbalabs.com/calendar. Next week might be a little funky. I'm going to Rare Evo, so things are going to be a little bit, I won't be able to meet next Thursday at this time, for example. But I'll communicate in Discord and we can decide how to run the sessions. So thanks, y'all, and see you soon. Let me